Hi, I'm Kathy from Eclectic Images and thank you for joining me today. Today's video is going to be doing some blending on a mixed media cardstock to create a fantasy moonlit scene. So it'll be a scene over a pond with the moon and the willows, and it's going to look really pretty. I've done this one before and done it on a monochromatic palette where I do it just in shades of the one colour. Today I want to do it with adding just some hints of other colours in, just to make it that bit prettier and more fantasy. So I hope you stay with me and watch this one and get some fun out of it. Okay, let's have a look at our stamps for today. We've got the grass set, the willow. Grass set we'll be using, I think, mainly this curly one. Also some reeds and the flower border, which I love putting in to create little the foreground pieces. Our inks is quite a mixture. We'll be using some Versafine Clair in Nocturne, and because I'm choosing to go with a green palette for this one, I've picked Shady Lane for some extra stamping. But our backgrounds, we're using the Deco inks. Now because I'm going to be working with the greens, I'll mainly have spring green and pine green, but I'm going to add some blue in there as well. So let's get some sky blue, and we might even have a little bit of yellow. I'll see about that. So we may have the palette of the 4 inks there. Now these are a water reactive ink, so when I spray them with water they will react, whereas these dry waterproof. So if I decide at the end, once I've stamped everything, that I do want to add some water to it, these will move, this won't. So I know my stamping will stay nice and solid images. Okay, so we are going to do a bit of spritzing, and I'm going to do that with some Perfect Pearls, and we'll add that into a spray bottle of water. Now I've already got some in, but I want it a little bit stronger, so I'm going to show you just how we make this. Now this can be done with Perfect Pearls or with the Colour Blast mica powders. Now you may notice some extra voices and noises in the background. We do have our grandson with us today, and also the dog. So yes, there may be some odd little bits and pieces around. Please excuse that. He may even come and say hello. But let's do some mixing. So Perfect Pearls and my spatula, and I'm just going to add an extra couple of scoops. Normally I do about 5 scoops to a bottle, but it depends on how large your bottle is. This is a slightly bigger mixing bottle, so let's add another 3 scoops. And I think that will give me more of the metallic that I want. Now I just screw the lid back on, give it a good shake, and we should be able to see that lovely pearlescent moving around. And it's not, this isn't so funny, it's the game he's playing that's funny. Okay, so let's start on our piece. So our BRT cardstock comes as both, it's a mixed media card, comes as both 12 by 12 and A4. So you can cut it back to work on a card size, you can cut it back for the A4 back to journal size, or you could do this technique directly into your journals, of course. But you also, the 12 by 12 is fabulous because it's a nice heavy weight and it can handle having a bit of water sprayed on it. It's not so good for doing a lot of watercolouring, but it can handle texture pastes and artist inks and sprays and dripping water on it. So it's a great cardstock for creating your own layouts. Now I'm just going to get Matthew to just pan over a little bit to this side to show you some samples on the different size formats and also in some different colour schemes. So we've got a card size, and I've done that one in pinks with some orange, and I've used the Versafine Clair Chianti to do some of the stamping. We've got this one that I'll be redoing today, which is in the greens with the Shady Lane for the stamping. And then this one, I've picked the blues, but added a bit of pink and yellow into the water. As I said, it just makes it a little bit prettier. And we've also brought in some extra colours into the moon there. So on this one, I've used a mask to mask off where I want to put my photo, so I could work my scene around that. But it just shows that the same stamps and the same ink blending techniques can work on whatever size format you want to work on. Okay, so let's get our piece of A5 cardstock. And I'm going to start off doing the moon. Because we're going to spray it with water, if I start doing all the lovely shading in the background and then do some spritzing, it's going to affect that shading. So it's better if I do the moon and then dry that, and then we can create our blended background around it. So to do the moon, I just need a reverse mask. So this is where I've die cut a circle. I'm keeping the circle later for when we're doing the colouring on the background, but at this stage we'll use the reverse part. So we just work out where we'd like our moon to be, place it on, and then we can start doing some shading with our inks. And I'm going to choose the spring green and the sky blue, and I will open the yellows. I'll just move those inks out of the way for the moment. I will open the yellow as well because I might add a touch of yellow in there. In fact, I usually like doing yellow first because then I don't risk contaminating other ink pad, the yellow ink pad with other inks. So let's grab a little bit on the brush, and because we're going to spritz this with some water and we want it to look a little bit mottly, I really don't have to do a great deal of blending. I'm actually just picking up ink on my brush and just, I'm still doing some circles, so we're still doing a bit of blending, but I can also stipple a bit in there. I can let it be patchy. Because we're going to do that spritzing, and these inks, when we do the spritzing, will move. Okay, now I'm just going to switch to the blending brush that we'll be using when we do the background to do the green, the spring green. And a bit more blue. So I'm doing the colour a little bit stronger than I would normally do for a moon. It's because I know once we put the water on, it'll actually lift it back a little bit. Okay, maybe a bit more spring green down the bottom. Right, I think that is ready for a spray. Let's move our inks out of the way. Give our Perfect Pearl Mist a bit of a shake. I'm holding that down. You know, I might use my magnetic mat already. I'm going to use this when I do the background colouring with the moon on, but I think it'll work already. So let's pop it in under our work pad. So I've still got some paper there to be absorbent. And let's just position that mask over there and pop a few little magnets around. I'll need to dry them off because they're going to get spritzed with metallic, but that's okay. It's helping to hold my mask down for me. And the other thing I'm going to need is a bit of paper towel ready to do some sponging, some lifting off of the colour. So I'll just have that standing by ready. Okay, let's grab our metallic spray and mist away. Actually, I can see I've got a little bit of my card exposed there. So I'm just going to use another bit of paper to mask that because I don't want metallic spray over the rest of the piece. I want the moon to stand out as shiny. So let's spritz that, and those colours are going to blend and move. I'm not sure whether that magnet's in the way of Matthew seeing what's happening there. So we'll let it sit for a moment, let it do its job, and then I'll lay the paper towel down. And we'll lift some away and you get this wonderful mottly look, but that's also metallic. So it's very cool. Okay, I'm just wiping those on my apron. Let's lift that out of there and have a look. That's beautiful. And of course, because I've done it this way round, it hasn't bled everywhere. Other times when I've tried this without doing it first, it's bled into all of my background. So it's behaving itself because I've changed the order of doing things. Oh dear. Okay, so now we need to dry that off a little bit before we start doing our background shading. Let's grab our heat gun and just give it a bit of a dry. And then I can have a bit of a look too and make sure I'm happy with the amount of metallic on it. Yeah, that's got a nice shine. Okay, so now we cover that up. So this is where I have cut a mask of the moon, but we're also going to cover the horizon line. So I'm going to do the sky first, and I want to be able to see a horizon line. So we use just a straight edge bit of paper, but we also want that horizon line to be straight. So just for a moment, I'm going to flick my work pad out of the way, because on the magnetic mat, I've got some lovely grid lines. So I can actually line up my base card with the grid, and then I can have a look and make sure that my bit of paper that I'm putting across as a mask is actually horizontal. So I'm just moving that, just wiggling it a bit until it's sort of lining up on one of those lines. Cool. Now I just get a little bit of an easy to remove tape and pop that down here. So that holds all that in place. So now we can flip it over and start doing our shading of our sky. So we pop that down. We've still got our magnetic mat in place, which means I can pop the mask on over the top of our moon and pop a magnet on to hold that down. Okay, we're ready to start shading. So let's go. Now we're sticking mainly with the green theme. I'm going to bring the bit of blue in when we come down to the water. So I'll just pop the lid on the yellow and the lid on the blue, and we'll work with the green and the pine green for the sky. So I'm going to start with the bigger blending brush. I find on matte cardstock, it's easier to blend with this sort of blending brush. So we pick up a bit of colour. Now I know this is a nice juicy ink pad, so I'm going to start off on my scrap and then start shading in. Now particularly if you're working on a 12 by 12 cardstock piece, don't stress over this not being perfect. It can be a cloudy sky because it is hard to evenly cover a piece of cardstock the size of 12 by 12. I think someone just drove past and the dog's finding it very exciting. Far more exciting than me doing colouring blending. It's funny the dog's not overly chuffed with blending. Okay, now I'll work up from the horizon line a bit. It does seem strange to do the sky in green or to be doing it in pink, but that's why this is a fantasy look. It's not realistic. It's creating colours that you might get on a night, a moonlit night. So we bring the green in all the way around. We can go right up to the edge of that moon mask. We're going to put some darker green around that. Do be careful, particularly with a fresh ink pad like this one. You can see I've got a bit of a mark there that I'll need to cover up later. Because it's a fresh ink pad, if I go straight onto the card, it will grab. So each time I ink up, I've got to start off on my scrap and work in. Or start off on the mask and work up. Because otherwise you'll get the colour grabbing on the cardstock. And that happens whether you're working on gloss card or matte card. Okay, I'm now going to switch to the deeper green, the pine green. And for this, I'll switch to one of our number 10 future brushes. And I'm going to go around the edges. Now I don't need to worry about going all the way down the sides because when I take the mask off, we'll actually fill that in so that the dark green goes all the way around the top and the bottom. But I might as well get the top edge done, and I'm just going to, I want it a bit stronger. So the thing I can do with these brushes is I can actually scruff the ink on and get it on a bit stronger. And I need to tilt my work a little bit, so I'm just going to come around this way a bit. So I'm working so that I'm working at a comfortable angle for me. If you're not confident with the scruffing, start off with the circles till you've got a bit of colour on, and then try coming in and doing some scruffing. But you'll notice that my brush is pointing off the page. If I'm scruffing this way, I'll be getting solid dark lines of ink across there. You go this way, because I'm only inking the end of the brush, if I go this way, these bristles are helping to do the blending for me. So a bit of circles, and then come in with some scruffing. And when I get up to this corner, I know I want that nice and dark, so I'm just going to go straight in with the scruffing. Now this ink pad is obviously been used a bit more than what the spring green had, so I'm having to tap on the ink pad a bit more to pick up colour. That's fine. Okay, now checking where the moon mask is, it looks like it's all still in position nicely. So I'm just going to hold on that and do some circles around. So we're darkening that border around the moon, which will make it stand out and look even shinier. Sometimes when you're doing this, it doesn't feel like much is happening. Sometimes you can see it. Other times you need to sort of move the mask out of the way a bit to check how it's going. And I'm going to need to just come across this way. I could move my card back around so that I can get over this side. Now because I'm sort of going straight onto the card, I haven't re-inked my brush. But that may mean I'm not getting quite enough colour. So I'm going to do a re-ink and take a little bit off on the edge of the card. I really don't want any blobs with this shading. Okay, let's lift the magnet off and just see how it's looking. Am I getting enough shading there? Nice. Yes, that's what we want. You see that's making that moon stand out more by giving it the shadow around it. So now at this stage we can lift away. I'll close up the pine ink. I like to close, especially these little ink pads that are quite small, I like to keep the lids on them because I don't want them drying out too soon. Okay, we take off our double-sided tape and we can take off that mask, and there's our sky ready for us to start adding in the water. Now we want to leave a little bit of lighter colour where the moonlight's hitting the water, and I'm going to come in with some yellow, and this time using these brushes I can actually just push the brush down and do a little bit of a wiggle. And I don't mind if I get a blob near the outer edge because I'm going to be putting darker colours around there. So I'm going to do a little bit of a wiggle of yellow in. Pop the lid back on that one. Let's add some blue in there, which will look really pretty. But keeping in mind that I want to keep a little bit of lighter colour. So picking up a bit of blue, just testing on the side of the card to see how much ink it's got on it. Yeah, I'm liking that. Okay, now I'll come in with the spring green, that was the lighter green, and switch back to the blending brush. So picking up colour and just filling in the rest. And we want to take all the outer area back to being green so that we end up with just those hints of colour in the centre there. So shading in, shade over the top of those colours. And come in a little bit more, but let's still leave a little bit of lightness to it. And then we'll switch to the pine green and finally add our border around it. So pine green, back to a future brush. I know this one's a little bit drier, so I'm inking up quite thoroughly and going more directly on the card. I don't need to dust it off on the backing card as much. don't think I'm ready for doing any singing like that on the video. Okay, along the bottom, I'm assuming there's some music on the game he's playing at the moment, and we're singing along, and it's making me smile. Okay, inking up, get that corner darkened right off. And then let's just head up that side. We're nearly there with the backing. And then we'll start adding the stamping in, and it will all just come together beautifully. So you can see why I didn't need to ink down the sides to start with, because I'm just inking straight over that horizon line. So it could wait until I remove that mask. Okay, so there's our background. I'll just cover that ink because we're going to be switching now to the Versafine Clair to pop our stamping in. And how exciting does that moon look with that little bit of shine to it? Okay, now let's come in with our Willow. So our Willow we'll do with the shady lane and then the black. And again, we're going to do first and second generation stamping. So I want this side of the stamp to do this side of the card. So I do a long one, and I can do a little bit shorter one as a second generation, and even if I want a bit of a third one in there. I might do one coming over the moon. And then this half will be this half of the stamp. The only thing you've got to watch when you're doing first and second generation stamping is sometimes, so like there where I've just used a little bit of the stamp, if you look at the inking of the stamp, there's still a whole lot of first generation ink there and second generation just on that bit. So if I stamp that down now, I'll actually stamp it on the backing card so you can see. We get it solid lines. So in this case, where I'd only used a small amount of it, I would be better to re-ink the stamp, stamp it on the scrap, and then come in to do my second generation. Okay, now let's do our black. Now this is also a chance to fix up any bits that you're not 100% happy with. So I'm looking at my composition, just cleaning off that the rest of the green, and I'm thinking, I had a few little bits of leaves on there, but not quite enough showing, so I think I'd like to cover that a bit. So let's ink our stamp.
It's almost like you've done this sort of thing before.
Funny that, I have played with this stamp quite a bit. You can tell by the Willow that it's been used a bit. It's one of those stamps that's really quite stained, but that doesn't affect how the stamp works. As long as I cleaned it off between inkings, a bit of staining doesn't affect your stamp at all. And this one, it's a lot of staining. It's been used a lot, but that just shows your stamps are well loved. Now here, I'm not 100% happy with that, so I'm going to stick some black over there. Much better. And we might have something coming in here. And then that might be enough actually. Oh, no, I think I want a little bit just down that edge. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's all of our stamping done and our basic colouring. unless you feel you're wanting a little bit of more of anything, I'm thinking I'd like a little bit more blue coming through. So let's just grab the blue brush, put that lid on the pine green before I stick my hand in it. Dust off a bit. I'm just going to bring a little bit more shaded in there. And you know what? That's a very wet mask. I was going to put the mask on and add some more blue back in on the moon area, but we might just do it without the mask. Okay. All right. Yep, that's pretty. Okay, lid back on that one, and our next stage is to come in with a white gel pen and start picking out some highlights. So you've got to think, where's the moon hitting some of our foliage, and start picking out some white highlights. Now just get your gel pen working first on your scrap paper, and I might not start on one of the most obvious fronds, just while I get the hang of, sometimes when you know it might be a couple of weeks since you've worked with a gel pen and you think, yeah, I might just start off on a bit more subtle area first until I know that I'm working with it the way I want to.
So was that wrong of me to zoom right in close on you work there?
So it can be dots, it can be lines, it can be little dashes, whatever you feel is right. So just if you need to, just go back and look at the moonlight and go, okay, well, it's going to be more on the top of that little blossom sort of leaning to the side. So our highlights are going to be more on that side of it. This one's more facing that way, so our highlights might be there. Now this is one of those things you can spend as much time as you like picking out all these extra little bits. Or you could just come in and add a couple of highlights if you don't have a lot of time for working your piece.
You are at 27 minutes.
We also want to pick out some bits on the willow as well. But I am going to come in with some glitter as well, so I don't need to catch every little bit with the white. And you may find that you need to actually go over some of the white a second time, particularly if you're not doing glitter as well. If you're just doing white, you may need to go over a few bits because sometimes the white blends in with the base colours. It can pick up on the inks. Okay, now just add a little bit of one on that long frond there. So if you need to, just go back and look at your moon and sort of trace your lines to see which side your highlights would be on. Okay, so the other things we're going to add in there, I said a bit of glitter, but I also want to add some liquid pearls. And I found succulent to me was a colour that went well with these green tones. So just give it a squeeze first, make sure it's coming out nicely with no air bubbles. And then we can do things like some centres to the flowers. You could add some extra flowers on some of our fronds. So instead of it just being a grass, it could become a grass with like seed heads. It's just an excuse actually to add liquid pearls. Just because it adds such a lovely spot of interest. Let's even that out with some on the other side as well. Now you start being careful because you're getting a little bit of pearls. You don't want to accidentally stick your hand in one of them as you do the next one. Is that too much? I think that might be enough. Now glitter, I'm using the Stickles diamond glitter. Again, going to give it a little squeeze just to make sure it's all coming out nicely. So here I don't want to do blobs. That's the job of the pearls. I just want to do some, I'm going to say, hard to say what I'm trying to say. I'm just going to sort of spread it with the nozzle as I squeeze the glitter glue out, so we just get trails of glitter, not blobs of glitter.
So it's like snails have been walking up the grass.
Like snails have been walking up the grass, exactly. So we're just getting hints of shine through there. So if I hold that up to the camera, you'll see we're just picking up bits without, hopefully without it looking too heavy. So I'm keeping the Stickles nozzle moving as I'm squeezing it. And silly me, I've decided to do the glitter just over the black fronds, which is where I mostly concentrated the white gel pen. So hopefully I'm not obliterating all of the gel pen, but it might mean that I come in with the white gel pen and add a little bit more highlights to some of the green fronds as well. So some of them you might add a little bit more, some a bit less. Diamond glitter in the Stickles, there's a few colours, diamond, stardust, crystal, that are all translucent glitters. So they're not giving an extra colour, they're just giving the lovely sparkle, and that makes them very easy to work with for something like this. And we might just add a little bit of glitter down the bottom to balance it out as well. So let's pick out just a few of our little fronds down here. So again, I'm just moving the nozzle. We just pick out some little bits on some of the flowers. Just almost just tapping as I give it a very light squeeze, just almost tapping it and scraping it so that we get just little bits of glitter without overdoing it. Mind you, Matthew will smile because he knows how much I love glitter and forever overdoing it. So I'm stopping now, so and I can have a look and go, this is good, I haven't overdone it. Okay, except that I do want to add that little bit of extra white gel pen into some of these green fronds. So again, just going to get the gel pen running and then just pick up some highlights on some of these green ones, the deeper green. making sure I don't crash my hand into where I've already glittered. Loving the look of those pearls. Okay, I will stop now because I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, let's bring it forward onto the black so you can see it a bit better without all my messy pad behind it. So there's our scene done, our Moonlit Pond scene done mostly in greens. Now, I just want to add one more little stamp to it because I want to show you some of the options you can do with small stamps. One of them is our little birds. Now, the little birds can be a bit tricky because they're very, very small. So whereas with most stamps you want to put pressure on when you're stamping, you don't want to do that with the birds because they'll blur. You want to just touch them to your page. And also, by stamping them out once, you can go, oh, I've got that. If I'm going to stamp this way, I had it upside down. So I'm just going to put some birds in the sky. To just add that extra little bit of interest. You're going to be way off in the distance. Just a touch. There. So off in the distance is a little flock of birds. Now the other stamp that works well for that, we've got a couple of seagulls in the beach set that works well, but also the one I've used on the card format is our bats out of the All Hallows Eve set. They work really cool too. Okay, so there you've got your three different format sizes and 3 different colour schemes, just showing you the same technique but how much variation you can get depending on what canvas you're working on and what colours you go with. So I hope you enjoyed that and hope you enjoy having a go and building up all those layers and then adding your bits of sparkle and stuff to it as well. I've had fun, hope you have too. See you next time.